Hi everyone, it's Colleen Frost, and I hope you can see me. I just babbled for like 4 minutes, and I thought, okay, that's good. And I just realized I never hit the record button because I'm doing this from my phone, which I typically don't shoot this way. So I hope you can see me now. So today I want to talk about settlement statements, also called HUD-1s, and they're actually going to be changing the name of this document in Texas, because when you see HUD-1, you think of like a HUD home, like a foreclosure. So I wanted to go over this crazy piece of paper that can be a little bit tricky when you get it. It's so hard to read. You have no idea when you I don't understand why they don't have little pluses or little negatives to make it just a little bit more simplistic. So good news is we're getting a new settlement statement, I think, in August. Bad news is, rumor has it that it's even more of a challenge to read. So just wanted to go over this settlement statement. Here on this side is the buyer side. On the right-hand side is the seller side. You're going to have the name of the borrower and the seller and the address and all that good jazz. And right at the top, the number that's very important to a lot of people is the sale price, and the number at the bottom is what people are walking away. And what a seller wants to see is right here where it says cash. Oh, we're not focused in. There's a little box right where my fingernail is. You want it to, not from. This means cash to the borrower. If it says cash from the borrower, that means the borrower is bringing money. So we want to see the to. That's a good sign. Okay, so remember, left is the borrower, right is the seller. Something I wanted to go over is the option fee. You're going to see typically our option fees in Texas, you know, they're about $100. A strong one might be, you know, $250, $500, depending, you know, depending on the house, depending on the time of the year, how many offers are on the table, but very standard to see $100. I apologize, this is not focusing in. So $100 you're going to see is now, since the seller cashed the check and the buyer came to close, it's going to be credited to the buyer. So from the seller to the buyer, you're going to see that $100 on both sides. You're also going to see seller paid title policy, buyers being credited, that same amount right there. Title policy is typically roughly 1% of the value sales price of the home. So if you're talking about a $400,000 home, title policy is going to run you about $3,000. So I always say 1% just to cushion, be on the high side. I always have, you know, I have the app, as I'm sure every other realtor does on their phone, the title policy, so I can be sitting right there at the listing appointment and whip off one of these, you know, settlement statements really quick to kind of give you a better idea of what your walk away is going to be. Again, you're going to see a credit and you know, a charge from the seller and a credit to the buyer, and that's for the association dues. When a seller pays their association dues, let's say you pay 6 months at a time, but you only live there for a week, you're going to be credited back oh no, I apologize. This is actually a credit to the seller and a charge to the buyer, because the seller went ahead and paid January 1st through July 1st, but they didn't live there the entire time, so they're actually being credited back that difference from the buyer. So what else do I really want to go over? Oh, a really good one, county taxes. So this can be tricky. Towards the end of the year, let me turn this around, but I won't be able to see myself. Towards the end of the year, it can be quite a challenge to sell your home if you have an escrow account. Not as much now as it was a few years ago, but let's play a hypothetical game. Let's say it was a few years ago. You purchased your home and you lived in it for a year. You bought it FHA. Let's say it was 3.5% down. So you didn't put a lot down. You lived in it for a year. The market really didn't, you know, do some drastic swing. And so after all of your fees, let's say you were even lucky to, you know, have equity in the property. And let's say that after all of your fees, your attorney fees, doc prep fees, real estate fees, tax cert fees, title fees, all of that, which I always say is roughly 7.5% when you add in your title. But let's say you still had equity in your property, and we pay taxes and arrears here in Texas. So let's say you're closing November 1st, and you have your escrow account. Let's say your tax bill is $8,000 for the year, but you're closing November 1st. Title legally has to collect your taxes and pay your tax bill. They're actually going to credit it to the buyer, and the buyer will pay it when the tax bills come out, and they're due the end of January. So they're due here in like 2 more weeks. So let's say I run, a net sheet, and I tell you that after everything, you're going to be walking away with $4,200. Let's say your tax bill is $8,000 for the year, and you escrow your taxes, so it's sitting in this little pool over at Wells Fargo. But we can't take that pool of money from title or from the bank and apply it to title. That's not, unfortunately, the way it works. I wish that was the way it works. So let's say from January 1st to November 1st, you owe, you have to pay the buyers that credit for living in the house January 1st through November 1st. So you owe $6,600 to the buyers so that they can pay that tax bill come January of $8,000. They'll pay the difference of that, $1,400. So what will happen is now you were supposed to get $4,200, but because you have to pay your taxes through title, you actually have to bring $2,400 to close. I know that doesn't always sound good when you're right there and you don't have a ton of equity in your home. You are going to be able to call your bank the day after you close. I'll remind you at closing. You're going to get your money back. You're going to get that big pool of $7,000, $8,000 that's sitting over here at Wells Fargo, and they're going to send it back to you legally within 30 days. Again, if you call them the day after and tell them you closed, which they know that you've closed, but just verify everything and get that quicker. But that can be a challenge for sellers towards the end of the year when you don't have a ton of equity and you have that pool of escrow sitting over at your bank, and you still have to pay your taxes at the end of the year and credit that to the buyer. So again, the buyer can pay the tax bill when they come out, which they come out in October-ish, and they're due by January 30th. So they're due coming up here pretty soon. So that is the first page. This is the most important, is what the buyer is going to be bringing to close and what the seller, hopefully, it says to, and you'll be receiving that. Then the second page is your real estate fees at the top. Then you've got some buyer loan origination fees. The third page that we're not going to look at right now, that's typically for the buyer. It has all their loan information on it. But you're going to have some other credits. You're going to have what's an important one? You're going to have your recording fees, your doc prep fees, your closing fee, which is typically, you're going to see that there, it's typically $350. It's very standard. And you have overnight delivery and tax cert fee and recording fees into the county. So, and then at the bottom, you're going to have your HOA. Typically, it's always negotiable, obviously, but usually a seller buys a buyer a home warranty. That's usually about $500 to $750, depending if you have a pool or not. I've seen them as much as $1,300 if you have a 7,000-8,000 square foot home and it has 4 air conditioning units, and it's a big home with a pool, and so obviously there's going to be a bigger warranty on that home for the 1 year. Again, always negotiable, but pretty customary that the seller will provide and pay for to the buyer of their choice a credit for a home warranty. So I hope that helps a little bit about that crazy settlement statement instrument. And if you have any questions or comments, you can call me 214-284-1080. Check out our website at colleenfrost.com, and thanks for watching this video.